Hi guys, Chris here. I've been playing with a project. Been a while since I've done something that I really felt was worth making a video of. But this has kind of been a pretty cool project. I caught some guys doing these low profile pickups for their cigar box guitars online, and I got real interested in it and decided to give it a try. What I found out was there was a lot to it and a little more going on than I can seem to find in any video, so I decided to toss out a quick video on it, on what I've learned in doing it so far. Bear with me here, I've not done one of these videos in a while. There's some goods and bads to this whole layout and design of laying the pickup flat. It took me a while to understand what was going on. The good in it, they are low profile, and you can get them on the face of a cigar box guitar, slip them in between the face of like my arch top. One fits really nicely, and they look really freaking cool. I've coated mine in epoxy resin. I hadn't seen that done yet, and I'll show you a little about that as I go here. Negatives on it, I hope you can read this. They're fairly low output relative to a traditional guitar pickup design, and I couldn't quite figure out why. It took me a little bit to think through it. And they do seem to have a lower bass response, and I'm not sure why on that yet. I'm still working on it, and I'm happy to post another video if I figure it out for sure why. The low output, they're about half per winding on an equivalent magnet, and it finally dawned on me. On a standard guitar pickup, you have a magnet towards the bottom, you have pins or a plate rising up through, and you have the coil here, and you have lines of magnetism, theoretically. You guys with a degree in this can help me out and correct me if I'm wrong, but so basically the guitar string is intersecting these lines of magnetism and breaking the lines of magnetism. I've read a lot on electrical theory, and breaking lines of magnetism, there's a direct correlation with how many lines of magnetism you break to the voltage output, if I remember right. So here we're breaking lines of magnetism to both sides. When we lay the pickup down flat, we have our magnets here against our plate of metal extending out our coil. We're roughly breaking half as many lines of magnetism with the guitar string. So it makes perfect sense. It's not going to be a very hot pickup at all. I found that I could work around this really well. This led to a little bit of a cigar box guitar project going on anyway. And when the option was a piezo, which is going to have active circuitry anyway. I see guys plugging piezos in all the time online, but they're amplifying the heck out of those. When you just stick a piezo in, if you just plug it straight in your amplifier, you get very little signal. So if you're willing to throw on a LM386 booster, quick and simple, these are really great to work with, but I would count on active circuitry and a 9-volt battery and just build this as your active circuit. It's cake and a great first electronics project if you've never done one. I'm going to move over here and I'll show you a few things as I've done this. I'll give you some pros and cons that I've figured out that might help you if you want to give this a try. I've seen at least 3 guys building these online, and they did not point out to me that I'm probably going to go through about 2.5 miles of wire before I could get my technique finessed out. But the wire isn't extremely expensive. Through Remington on eBay, they're out of Illinois. I actually get it the next day because of my location. I'm using a 43 gauge wire here. I set my spool on the floor, unroll off the end, use my hand to hold. The guys I've seen doing these bulldog styles online were all just using a flat plate of metal. Everyone I seen was designed somewhat like this. I'll try to get it in close to you. They did a double coil type design which looked really cool. But the winding starts stacking and falling off the end really, really fast. And a negative to this double coil type design, which I finally worked out, half the time the second coil isn't working. They were just jumping over and continually winding. So it was shorting the coil back to the metal plate, and it was all grounding, so only one coil was working anyway. What I found was that if I made a bobbin and went to a single coil, I could get a lot more winding on it. I'm getting to where, I mean, I've got a usable pickup without active circuitry. Still not hot enough that I would use it without active, but and I'm getting in the 12K ohm range worth of winding on and using neodymium magnets, and I'm still not as hot as my Ibanez pickups on my arch top, and I'm at about half at that. So yeah, you guys that know or don't know, that's it's neither here nor there. If you get some winding wrapped around enough winding around a magnet, you're going to get signal, and it's fun to play with. What I wound up doing here, nobody showed how they were bracing these. I wound up making my bobbin. I used balsa wood, so I'm using the same metal plate, but I made balsa wood retainers so I could stack the wire much, much deeper. I've got two different sizes here that I've played with. Getting a little more winding loop on there makes all the difference in the world. To hold, what I came up with, I wasn't seeing anything that worked good for this. And I tried 100 different things, and this stack of 2.5 miles of wire came from a lot of that, things slipping, things moving while I was winding. What I came up with was very simple, works perfectly for a pickup like this. I took a nail, 10-penny nail, I beat the head flat on it, I epoxied it to a small plate of metal, and then I CA glued 2 neodymium magnets to the plate. So I can chuck it in my drill, slap my plate on it, guide it to center till she's obviously moving center, at which point I am using a little tape just to make sure if I run up to high speeds I don't sling it. Now, I do recommend CA gluing those magnets because I did sling one out once and I don't have them sitting here, but I also recommend going ahead and wearing some safety glasses just in case you were to sling a magnet loose in the process. Now, I cut a slit in the balsa wood for the center of my core to pass through against the metal plate. I begin my wire. I'm not even going to start a wire. You couldn't see it anyway. It's the size of a human hair. It's very, very small wire. Start slowly and get a slow base build up. Once you know you're running true, you have everything perfect, you can get to a high speed, or you can throw it off like that. I have to be careful. This drill will run too fast, and I did that on purpose because I did want to show you that you can throw it at yourself, and you don't want to do that. I have a setting on this drill that I lock it down a little slower. I can get to a speed running about like that, and it works just fine. Now, moving on, I cast mine in epoxy resin. I mean, that has been a challenge in itself and a whole project in figuring out. I used from Amazing, has a 2-part to make your own molds. And what I wound up using was, for my primary that I'm using, I've got 2 different ones, one for the larger, one for the smaller, to pour them in resin. I used a icing container, plastic jug frosting comes in a pickle jar lid. The icing container, I cut off some off the bottom, and it was the outside. If it's close enough, I'll grab it and show you. You just need one item slipping inside the other item, and bam. This takes about a half hour to dry, and then you have your mold. On the casting resin, I have used this 2-part Amazing. It's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other on it. I have had better luck with this. Cast and Craft, which is a 2-part. It's like a fiberglass resin-ish, but it doesn't yellow. It's a non-yellowing. This cures a little faster, so you could have bubbles in it easier, but I had trouble with consistency on the Amazing, and I think it is, what I think is happening is over time, I'm very good with my mix ratio, but I think over time, the resin, one of the parts is settling out a little bit in the container. So if you have it too long, what I wound up finding was at the center of the containers, they hardened perfect. When I first started out, they were gummy and didn't harden good. Around the center, they dried different, and then as I got towards the bottom. So what I started doing, if I am using this, what I would watch is before you use it, you might flip the containers over, roll them around. Don't let them sit in the exact same position all the time. It does seem that I've had a little bit of a problem with that. This pickup on this guitar, it did finally harden, but it was sticky to the touch for 3 weeks. And that was just ridiculous to me. These, I am using the Cast and Craft. I bought this at Hobby Lobby. It's $28.99 a jug, and I can pull them out of the form in a few hours, and they're dry to the touch in 24 hours, and have been consistent. They're the same every time. My problem with the Amazing has been its consistency, which seemed to be just a little across the board. It wasn't the same every time I used it. So, temperature, of course, things vary, but it's a very doable, very fun project. Just give it a shot. It's well worth it. I have done them a couple of different ways. I had the other one sitting here, but I've apparently lost it. There we go. I'll come up a little closer and let you get kind of a look at these. But, this is a good working pickup. It's like a weak. It's at the level of a weak lipstick tube pickup from the early days. It's not got a great bass response. I'm not sure why, but I'm working on that. This one I actually wound. I bought a roll of magnet strip, craft magnet strip, and making sure to keep them the same direction, I laid 2 pieces out on each other and a small strip of metal to hold it stiff. Left the strip of metal long enough to get it chucked in the drill, and I just went ahead and wound on it and made a pickup. And that's actually a cake mold or a candy mold from Hobby Lobby. We have a Hobby Lobby close by. I don't have just anything to work with, so just wanted to show you these, and having a lot of fun doing them. And one warning I would give you is that building these little suckers, I got into the pickups, which seems to lead you to every time you build a cool pickup, if you're like me, you might all of a sudden have to build a darn guitar for the thing, which I seem to have a few too many. Maybe I'll start selling them. Have a great day, guys. Bye.